The call from the unconscious, when your soul wants you to remember. Inside each person, there is a nameless silence, a place the mind cannot enter, and words cannot reach. It is where the soul keeps its most ancient memory. A pure essence, untouched by time. You may no longer remember it, but your soul has never forgotten. We grow up in a busy world where every voice tells us to strive, to improve, to become someone. But few ever ask, who is doing the striving? Become who, and for what? And more importantly, who am I when I am not trying to become anything? There exists an ancient technique, not taught in schools, not written in textbooks, not present in popular religious rituals. It was hidden. Not because it lacked meaning, but because it was too powerful. It is not a mystical rite. It is a remembrance. You don't need to learn anything new. You need to remember what you've always known. And when you truly remember, something begins to stir. Not the vibration of knowledge, but the primordial state of your being. A frequency, a note, a quiet yet persistent light, shining through every mask you've worn, every story you've believed, and every role you've played. Forgetting was designed. From ancient Egypt to Greece, from India to Zen caves in the East, there's always been a whisper echoing across time. Human beings have forgotten who they truly are. It's not forgetting out of laziness. It's a forgetting by design. Systems of control want you to remain asleep. They want you to believe that you are only this body, this title, these fleeting emotions. What they fear most is an awakened soul. Because once your soul remembers, it can no longer be controlled. Carl Jung called this the shadow of the personal unconscious, a part of ourselves that's been repressed, neglected, but never erased. And here's the paradox: the part we fear facing most holds the very key to returning home to ourselves. The forgotten child inside your soul. Inside you, there is always a child. Not in a physical sense, but the most innocent, sensitive, and authentic part of you, the one who was hurt, forced to be strong, taught that. Don't cry. Be good. You're not worthy unless you're excellent. That child never died. It just retreated inward. Every time you feel unworthy of love or not good enough, it is that inner child whispering, "No one held me back then." Jung called this the individuation journey, the process of becoming whole by integrating the parts of ourselves that were once split off. And the first step is simple but profound. Return. Sit. Listen. It's not about adding, it's about shedding. The so-called forbidden technique we're talking about is not a foreign secret. It is a state of being. A frequency that, when you enter it, begins to peel away the dust. You don't add anything to yourself. You begin removing what was never truly yours. The judgments, the conditions placed on love, the inherited beliefs passed down from generations. And when all of that grows quiet, you begin to hear the original melody of your soul. Not with your ears, but with your entire presence. Not with your mind, but through vivid feeling. When truth no longer comes through words. The Buddha said, "Truth is not in words. Words are just fingers pointing to the moon." Don't mistake the finger for the moon. When your soul starts to remember, you realize truth is no longer found in language. It lives in vibration. You look at the world, and everything seems to remind you of something deeper. Each person you meet is a mirror. Each emotion that rises is a whisper from a deeper part of you. And if you're brave enough, you may ask, who is angry? Who is hurting? Who is craving to be accepted? The answer won't come from your intellect. It will rise as a warm knowing, like someone inside you has finally been heard. And in the next part of this journey, we'll take you deeper into this awakening technique, how it works, the steps that help you transition from knowledge to lived meditation, and why your inner child is the sacred core that cannot be left behind. If you're ready, continue this journey with Buddha balance. The forgotten technique of remembrance, and the doorway within. There was a time when humans did not learn to know, but learned to remember. In the mystery schools of Egypt, India, and ancient Zen, no one taught you information. They helped you strip away what you are not. They guided you to remember what you have always been. Now is the time to explore this forgotten technique, not a mystical ritual, but a deeply practical and vivid practice. It is not written down because words cannot contain its essence. It must be felt, lived, and ignited from within. Phase 1. Deprogramming the false self. The self you are defending, is it truly you? The repetitive thoughts in your head, are they truly your inner voice, or echoes of parents, society, and the past? The fears you carry, have you ever sat down and asked, where did this fear come from? Who planted it in me? We don't realize that much of what we call ourselves is just a collection of habits and beliefs imposed by others. Carl Jung. The first phase is about seeing clearly and dismantling gently. You don't fight the darkness. You turn on the light of awareness. And once you see it is not truly you, it begins to fall away. Spend time in silence, not to escape your thoughts, but to observe them as an outsider. You will begin to see which beliefs no longer serve you. Which wounds are still controlling your behavior today. You begin to say goodbye to what is no longer truly yours. Phase 2. Activating the inner sense. When you sit long enough in stillness, something happens. You no longer listen with ears, but with presence. An inner sense begins to awaken. Not a sixth sense in the mystical way, but a deep knowing without analysis. You know without thinking. You feel without needing proof. This is where ancient wisdom arises, not from books, but from your heart. Practices to awaken this inner sense include mindful breathing, silent, goalless meditation, chanting compassion or visualizing sacred symbols, a lotus blooming in the heart, a sacred flame, a soul's mirror. Observing the body and each emotional response in the moment. What you imagine with full focus and love, your soul receives as real. Just like a child, when they draw a flower, they believe it is alive. Imagination isn't fantasy, it is the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. Phase 3. Resonance with your soul's name. In spiritual traditions, there is a curious idea. Each soul has a frequency, a name, not spoken aloud, but felt as vibration. You don't need to search for this name in language. You live in it, tune into it, like a note harmonizing perfectly in a cosmic symphony. When you tap into this vibration, you no longer seek validation from the outside. You stop pushing yourself to be accepted. You stop fearing loss, because you no longer feel lacking. Who am I? Is no longer a question, it becomes an unshakable knowing. You begin to live from a new center, so grounded, so peaceful, so real, that you no longer need to prove anything. But what happens when you touch the light? When you begin to remember, darkness rises too. Because light doesn't just illuminate beauty. It exposes the forgotten corners you once buried. You remember your mistakes, your old wounds, the heartbreaks you never faced. And that is when your inner child returns. It doesn't demand. It doesn't blame. It simply wants to be heard. Carl Jung once said, "You cannot become whole without facing your shadow." The child asks, "Why did you abandon me? Why did you try to be perfect when all I wanted was to be loved? When will you return and hold me just as I am?" This is the deepest phase of the technique. No more theories. No more techniques. Only the courage to sit beside yourself, with all your vulnerability, your wounds, and your truth. And you'll realize, when you hold that child, your soul becomes free. You are still here. And in the final part of this journey, we will take you from this awakening into real, everyday life. Because this technique is not just for sitting in meditation. It is for you to live, love, work, and exist as an awakened soul in a chaotic world. Living awake in the world, meditation in your eyes and every step. Awakening is not a moment. It is a way of living. A soul that remembers doesn't live differently from others, but it lives differently from who it used to be. No need to retreat into caves or leave the world behind. The only thing needed is this. Each day, live from the most truthful center within yourself. Imagine waking up, not to start your work, but to begin a pilgrimage inward. Every gesture, every action, becomes a sacred ritual. Drinking water as if offering tea to your own soul. Listening to another as if they mirror a forgotten part of you. Breathing with closed eyes as if it were the first time you've truly lived. Turning everyday life into meditation. Meditation in active silence. Not avoiding sound, but hearing every sound as part of your awareness. Even in noisy places, you can still stand in the wind without being moved. Meditation in self-care. Every kind word to yourself soothes the inner child. Every time you say no to what isn't aligned with your heart, you are restoring the boundaries of your soul. Meditation in communication. Responding without rushing. Listening without judgment. Speaking truth, not to win, but to connect. Are you nourishing your soul, or starving it? You don't need others to acknowledge you. You need you to acknowledge yourself. Reflect daily. What are you feeding your senses, eyes, ears, mind? What noise is distorting your original frequency? Is there a part of you being forgotten in life's busyness? You don't need to meditate for an hour every day to awaken. You need to return to yourself multiple times a day, even if only for a moment. Love begins with remembrance. When you no longer love to be loved back. When you no longer search for someone to fill the void. When you begin to love from a place already whole inside. That is when real love begins. Love is not a reward. Love is the natural resonance between two souls who remember themselves. And if you're alone, it is not a punishment. It is an opportunity to return. To learn how to love yourself before loving the world. A journey with no end, but always a beginning. You don't need to be perfect to begin. You only need to be honest. Honest with your pain. Honest with your emptiness. Honest with the part of you still waiting to be healed. And then, like light quietly lighting a candle, your soul's memory will awaken. No mysticism. No drama. Just a single moment of stillness, and you touch what you've always been. You are not here to learn. You are here to remember. And if you've made it this far, maybe your soul is gently nodding. I've been waiting for you. The next step doesn't live in words. It lives in how you walk from this moment on. In your eyes. In your words. In the way you treat yourself. Buddha balance is always here. A mirror, a bell gently ringing to remind you. You are not alone. And you were never lost. You are simply remembering. And that is the most beautiful beginning of all that is sacred.